Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. We're going to be talking about developing project schedules. So we'll be talking both about kind of like the technical side of putting together schedules, like what tools we're using to create them, and also some of the soft skills, right? So, like when you set aside that week at the end of your phase for QA/QC, how do you actually hold the week when other things in the schedule start sliding? And sometimes the inclination is to start crunching that, right? Or how to make sure you get your consultant stuff in time to review it and coordinate it before you submit it to the client. So as PMs, obviously, we're the ones developing the schedules, depending on the client, the project, and the stage of the process we're in. We're the ones outlining that pre-designed study process, even if it's a client that has a very prescribed process, like some of the state organizations, for example. I think we're also going in and looking at it with an eye specific to that project and our project team. We're setting the overall durations for the design phases. We're setting the milestones the entire team is working around. And we're deciding when the meetings with the client are happening. How are we pacing those during the project? And I think maybe most importantly, we're the ones thinking between all of the team members, all the consultants, who needs what, when, what order do things need to happen in, making sure that we all get our work done in time to deliver by the deadline, right? I'm really excited about this topic. I was a time management junkie before I knew there was a term for time management, right? Like I was that kid in middle school who was like, I can't wait to get my paper planner and fill out my project dates and my test dates and my soccer schedule. And, so I became a PM and was like, ooh, this is my jam. Like, I can't wait to put together the schedule. I want to be in charge of this. But also, like, yikes, there's a lot to think about and a lot of considerations, right? So I'm looking forward to this conversation today. I'm kind of aiming for a pretty informal kind of knowledge sharing session, right? So I think a lot of the people on this call probably have great thoughts to share. So I want people to feel welcome to jump into the conversation and pose additional questions. And I also invited a few specific folks here who I thought would have really great input on the topic. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves briefly so that there's a little context for their comments and thoughts, and then we'll jump in to the conversation. So Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you first. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Vincent. I'm at SMMA, Simmons Maney McKee. We're over in different than Rosalind's firm. We're over in Cambridge and near Harvard, and we do like K-12 schools. We do some government work, some college work, mostly in the New England area, and then corporate commercial, mostly what Kelly and I do, whether it be office or lab. And then we have like a, kind of a more technical division doing, data center work, stuff like that, some manufacturing spaces. So it's kind of a broad range of things. And, we tend to kind of stay in the same studio, if you will. I mostly, again, just do that stuff. I did one time go into some government work, which was very unique and different. And then the K-12 folks, like that's a different world for them. The projects are much longer. You're dealing with a whole town, so like the schedules are really rigid, where it's maybe a little more fluid, say like with a certain developer or something like that. Or Kelly, my colleague Kelly, she deals with, say, some of the larger science companies like Takeda, like maybe in corporate world maybe it's a little tighter there. So it depends on, it's situational, who you're dealing with. I'll just say that, typically in terms of like what I use, at the beginning of a job, or actually in a proposal stage, we might develop a schedule on in Microsoft Project that looks really nice. It's kind of got some detail to it. It looks, like we've got our act together. We're very organized. It has, just a good, look to it. Looks very official, chart of the whole thing. In reality, I don't use it that much. In contrast, Kelly's going to show you that she uses something similar to that, which is kind of interesting. So I typically just have a schedule that I develop in Excel with like the basic, it could be just SD, the DD phase, the CD phase, and then, like the past couple of years, things got a little more detailed, like, oh, we're going to have this long lead package, the early buyout of the, generator, like, okay, that's fine. We've got, whatever, 8 lines instead of 3 or 4 or something. That's fine. But I was typically not getting more granular than that. But I wanted to show you, because you asked, I wanted to show some other things that I've used, although
Sure.
I didn't fall in love with them, to be honest with you, but
Sure.
just to show them, just for variety,
Yeah.
the sake of variety. And I will say too, before I present it, is something, just echoing what you said at the very start, like this schedule, what I've found in doing, in being in this role for many years now, is that actually people love schedules. Like they can now plan their whole life, not just their business life, but uh, they know they can take a vacation after a certain date, whatever it is, like,
Mhm.
or they've got a deadline coming up. They know they're not going to the movies that Wednesday night, whatever. So
Yeah.
it's really helpful for everybody to be able to plan their lives. Most importantly,
Hmm.
um, I will share. Now, what am I doing? I'm going to share this. Okay, share. And can you see that? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So this is, as it says right here, Miro. And to be perfectly honest with you, this was on a project where I don't even know how to pan this thing. This was on a project that we did for a client that their past design team used this just a kind of a shorthand way to present information and a plan. And so, and this was Smart Labs. We had a engineering partner of AEI, and it was just this simple graphic schedule. It's kind of nice, to be honest with you. It's
Mm.
easy to read. Um, and we were just following, what they had done on the previous project. I have to say though, after using it for a little bit, I found it pretty annoying. Miro was, it's just like how to manipulate these little boxes and
Mm.
typing it out. It looks really simple, but even this, like this, doing this bar and all these dots and all this stuff, it was kind of labor intensive, like way more in labor
Hmm.
intensive than it looks
Hmm.
right here. So while I think it has kind of and then I kind of had some, some different um, phases down here. Well, it looks kind of simple. It was a little challenging to use, I got to be honest with you. So in the end, I can't say I really support this.
Mm.
And
I
then
like how
yeah,
it makes it
yeah,
clear like who's doing things, like who's
yeah,
doing what each week, right? Like, and you're all kind of working in
yeah,
parallel, right? Like
exactly. And
makes that very clear.
yeah, and then just, okay, we're going to wrap up this test fit, just
Hmm.
working towards that.
Right.
But I don't know, it didn't get that. It was kind of maybe nice that it didn't get too granular. Like here, there's the big issues. Let's just make sure we've got these things. We could talk about other things in the meeting, but these are the big issues we need to accomplish that week. And
Hmm.
then it kind of went on from there. And then once we got into DD, there's a much more to this. Once it got into DD, we kind of abandoned this, and nobody complained. I think what
Yeah.
we did was just might have had another way of breaking it down, like, agenda for next week. In the notes we had something that was
Hmm.
running in the notes, so that helps. And then I wanted to show one other thing, or if you had any questions about this, let me know.
No, I think this is helpful
Okay.
to see. Yeah.
The other thing, if I can get to my, here it is, right here. This was done in Mural, and this was the same project, and we had just finished DD, and we were about to go into CDs, and it was like, okay, wait a minute, we gotta do a real reality check here on what we're doing. And we had a poll planning session. I don't know if any of you have ever done poll planning, but it's
Hmm.
basically you're trying to look at all the things you need to do, and we had a big it was a glass wall they had at a conference room, and everyone gets stickies, and literally these were the stickies right here. Oops. You know, those are the stickies for all the different disciplines and all the things they need to do. And then you kind of go through and you see how these things relate to each other, and how much time each thing, if you're doing it right, how much time each thing needs, and how you can start to like really kind of maybe compress the schedule, allowing for a little bit of float still, but it's a whole, you know, art and science doing this thing. We don't do it too much in our office, but we've talked about it again now and again, just, you know, how we might take it up one more time. But basically, you know, we just started with like laying out the weeks, and it was on a glass wall, and like, okay, here's the end date. Backing up from that, we need a QC review. Backing up from that, and then we had a CEO, the owner, on the owner side, the CEO, he would not come to every meeting. So it was like, okay, we need to meet with him at this point and at this point, and then that's it. Because he was a big decision maker, like, and everyone would hang on final decisions until that person signed off. So like putting that into this, you know, into the schedule here. And honestly, then it's just kind of like breaking down, like, okay, final sign off. This was red was architecture, cup, the ceiling utility panels, the locations, like final RCP. You can kind of see just basic thoughts about what needs to happen. And then again, more could be layered in afterwards. This was not necessarily abandoned. We got going on CDs, and then the owner pushed the pause button, and we're still paused on this project. But this is again a whole, you know, a whole science, if you haven't heard of it before, called pull planning and managing this. And there are books and books written on this stuff and videos, I'm sure, on YouTube. So so I found that pretty interesting. And again, kind of simple to read and use. I think Mural's a little more, for me, it was a little easier to use than Miro.
Yeah,
So
thanks
I'll
for sharing that.
stop there if anybody has any questions.
So, and you might have said this at the beginning and I missed it, but you did the poll planning like physically in person with the Post-it notes and then kind of converted it to this format, right? Yeah.
That's right. And then once it's in this format, you can kind of easily add and subtract and move it around.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever like export it to PDF for like record or sharing with others? Yeah.
I think you can. I didn't end up using it that much, but I bet I'd be shocked if you couldn't export it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Cool.
So
thanks.
Especially if any like external consultants, not even like client, but external consultants.
Yeah.
Could be good to share with.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll stop sharing. Oops. Hold on. That's the other share button. Okay, there we go.
So sorry. Zoom keeps kicking me out for some reason. So if I keep dropping off, that's why. But thanks for sharing that, Steve. That was really neat to see. I think next, let's go to Vivian. I know, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and maybe talk a little bit about the tools that you use?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Unlike majority of you, I do not come from the architectural side. I'm actually on the OPM side. So similarly to Steve, where you guys are on SMMA, working on the architectural or SAM architects design and HMFH designing the K through 12 and universities, were the OPMs or the owners project managers that come in first and help with the owner and act as an agent of the owner. I've been with Hill, or formerly known as Hill. Now we've recently merged with one of our sister companies, so it's still taking me a little bit of time to get used to the new name as Hill Lero. And our primary focus has always been in the education space, either it be from the K through 12 early education centers, as well as various universities, from all of the UMass campuses to URI and everywhere somewhat in between. For us, it's a little bit more prescribed on what we use. We've been utilizing heavily Microsoft project. And with that, we usually initiate, and we don't only put it in our proposals for show, we actually really rely on it. And I appreciate your comment about people planning their lives around these schedules, because it is absolutely truth. And even as far as like the project team's vacation schedule on when can you take a vacation, if it's a milestone happening and it's very close to a deadline of a deliverable with, for example, if we're working with MSBA on a K through 12 project, no, I need that deliverable and submission to go smoothly. So vacation is planned after. We also, once we get into the construction phase, we do switch off to utilizing a P6 schedule. And where that one, we're not the ones generating it, it's more the contractor, but we do put it into our proposal and requirements for contract with the contractor to utilize P6. And we have our own internal P6 schedulers that review it, look at the risk on which items, if on a monthly basis, requesting the update and going through each item, seeing where there might be some conflicts as far as work power and work, based on how many people are on site and when you anticipate having the project or that portion of the task completed, if you have enough staff on site for the contractor, as well as if they are falling behind, where is there a recovery? And how can we recover that schedule to still meet all of the deadlines? I wanted to also similarly share, I'll share my screen and actually this one, where our project schedules are a lot more detailed. They're not, this is one that's in the very early phases, very beginning. And currently this project is for the town of Winchester. It's the Lynch Elementary School. And we have moved on to construction. So we don't completely abandon the Microsoft project schedule. But once it starts getting into the construction phase, it becomes more of like a 1 or 2 task item milestones of making sure that we hit those. But I wanted to highlight here on, the level of detail we do put in a Microsoft project schedule that is at the beginning stages, even in the preferred schematic. When are we going to have community updates? Even if it's not a public project for a K through 12, and it is for the university level, for example, we use Still Project for all of UMBA projects, University, Massachusetts Building Authority, and all of the UMass campuses. We still put in providing an update to UMBA when they anticipate having some of the stakeholders, when those meetings are happening as well. And it's not just one line of this is when the start and the end date is for the schematic design, as well as, when the comments are due back for the preferred schematic report, when we anticipate having the facilities assessment review with MSBA, and going into, leading up to the town vote on what are all of the items, the approvals that we need to work backwards to an approved project. And as we move forward, I just want to kind of like even demonstrate that we have to think about swing space very early on. As soon as we come on board, swing space is a #1 question. Sometimes it becomes more vital than, are you going to get the town vote? Because a lot of towns do support, K through 12 educational projects in town. It's very rare that they don't. But what are we doing in order to get the swing space needed to move the students to be able to facilitate the building of the project? And as we go forward to, as you see, bidding, and then I don't have, moving into the swing space, 60%, 90%, 100%. Contractor, bidding. For construction, notice I have the least amount of detail, because this is where we transition more into reviewing the contractor's P6 schedule. So this
sense.
becomes just more of a milestone and making sure I have a line item, just a bar graph, single item for construction. I anticipate it to be 387 days, and that's where we transition in reviewing the P6. But where this is still helpful for us is the FF&Es, the furniture, fixtures, equipment, the closeout phase, and then moving the students back in and making sure that the administration, for example, whatever party, whatever agency, town, private, public you're working with, has the adequate time frame they need to move in well in advance and give them the opportunity to set up so that when it's opening day, they're already fully functioning. So
Interesting. I was just gonna
yeah,
say, it's interesting seeing how like yours is very detailed, right? And I think
very.
thinking, Steve, to like you were saying, you know, you often will have like a few line schedule for like SD, DD, CD kind of thing. And there's like such a contrast there. And I assume there's some level of, because Vivian, you're using that to like manage step by step by step by step.
Yes.
And Steve, I'm curious because I feel like having like the kind of the simple Excel schedule is fairly common in architecture, and like especially in those early stages. And I know I personally very quickly was like, that's not enough for me. I need to see, when do we need the hazmat report so that we know what to do, you know, like all of the, like I said, like knowing who needs what when and how that feeds into everything else. And so like this will lead into the tool I started using to help me with that, because Excel was getting unwieldy to track those things. So Steve, I'm curious how I also wonder if there's a certain level of, in architecture, architects and PMs who are senior enough, you can do that in your head maybe at less than I can, or
Yeah, I think some of it, part of the answer is some of it I'm doing in my head, but I'm communicating maybe in a different way. I do appreciate what Vivian has shown. Again, we do have K-12 not only design here, we have a small OPM division as well. And maybe, you know, with the MSBA process or UMBA or whatever it is, like, you know, you're always going to have those steps in place, you know, with the town that you have to do, which is really helpful, you know, in creating a schedule. But yeah, I don't know. I suppose, you know, in some cases I could be doing something more detailed. So
Yeah, for us on our since we're the ones managing the client.
right.
yeah.
So making sure that the client is in participation, and similarly to, you know, where you showed the mural and the poll planning on when it is specifically, or I think it was on the Miro one where you needed the CEOs or the CFOs input.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that I'm holding that date and managing the client, and I'm expecting them to show up so that those decisions can be made on that timely manner, and and we utilize Project more as like our managing tool. So that way, when the client isn't able or is reluctant, you do have sometimes reluctant clients.
Yeah.
This is a free open space here.
Yeah.
We can, you know, and helping them see that, okay, if I shift that date, now what the ripple effects are, since there is the logic built behind it, versus, oh, it's just one day. What's the big deal if I make the decision today versus tomorrow? Helping them understand that by just one very quick shift, what you're doing as a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Because that one day translates sometimes into a week or two, given, you know, where it falls on the schedule, the weekends that come in, because we also plot in there like all of the holidays. And if it is a K through 12 or even a university, what the testing schedules are, when those, you know, there's time for being more quiet work, and what that actually translates into. So sometimes it's easier for us to demonstrate to a client that that one day delay actually had an impact of a week or two on the tail end that they weren't anticipating. But it's a quick way for us to demonstrate to them that, no, it does have a ripple effect.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
So make the decision when you need to.
Yeah.
Building on that in the commercial world, you know, obviously a town, you know, the high school kids not being able to move into the high school when it starts in late August, that's a big problem. By the same token, I've been on some larger CGMP projects, and we had to have a very, very tight schedule again. So if they don't start, on a certain date, August 1st, and they're not making those drugs, like that is serious money that they're losing. So to the same point. Thank you, Vivian.
Yeah.
And Kelly, you're the third one I asked to join today. So we've gone in deep already. Do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what tools you like using?
Sure. Yeah, and actually before that,
Sure.
just based on that last topic with owner involvement or client involvement, especially like, specific decision makers, usually on a schedule, I will try to color code those things or bold them or come up with a different graphic to represent it, just so that when, if it is an external schedule and I'm sending it out externally to the client or the owner, they can see directly like where their involvement is, alongside the design team and consultants, obviously. So
yeah, smart.
just a strategy I've been using recently. But
yeah.
For everyone who does not know me, I'm Kelly Sanborn. I'm a project manager at SMMA. I actually have a background in architecture from Roger Williams University. I'm assuming that might be an overlap here with some folks. I didn't study project management specifically. So I do have a background in architecture, which obviously helps a lot managing architectural projects. But during my time at SMMA, I transitioned into the project management department, which I've been in for about 6 years now. And I think, Steve touched on it a little bit earlier, but a little more about my experience. When I was in architecture, I was working in K through 12. So more of the public sector, but when I transitioned over to PM, I started more in the private sector. So corporate, commercial, science and tech. And that's what I'm really focused on today. So, yeah. And so it's a little background on myself, but tools that I use, I usually use the new Microsoft Project application. It is Microsoft Project, but it's a little bit more of a user-friendly version that's more quickly manipulated. So you can also embed it. I don't know if anyone here uses Teams as sort of a project dashboard. I try to use Teams as project dashboard. We integrated Teams, I believe it was 2018, and we've been using it, kind of piloting little things and programs along the way since then. So, and I had a kind of big role at my firm for piloting Teams at my office. So I usually like to use Teams as a dashboard, and I actually embed the schedule directly into the dashboard. So I can show you guys a little bit more on that.
I didn't know you could do that.
We do that for our projects as well. We create kind of like our own group for each project, and it's very helpful. So
yeah, we've used it as like for like a like the group chat sort of function, but and some files, but can't say we've mastered it.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people have, honestly.
Yeah,
since it's still a little bit new, but
yeah, we've done it some with consultants too, where like our weekly coordination agenda would be on there, and so they could go back and refer to it live and things like that throughout the week. But I will say questionable if anyone is still looking at it.
There's also a question in the chat that said, do you utilize the Microsoft Teams to the to-do list as a way of tracking? And I thought, we haven't at the moment. I don't think we've gotten to that level, but we use OneNote notebooks like incestuously on all of our projects.
Yes, we've started doing that too. And some people in our office have used To-Do and have really enjoyed it. I feel like it depends a little bit on if it's, I don't know. To-do lists are so personal, I think.
Yeah,
has their own system, but sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Can you guys see the screen? Are you seeing the one with the green bar at the top for project?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So just to show you guys, I have popped that out actually of this embedded version. So it's embedded in Teams. I can see it in Teams and use it here, but I have right-clicked and been able to open in browser, so I can see it a little bit larger. But so this is the newer version of Microsoft Project. It is, again, it's a little bit more user-friendly. I work on a lot of more quick fast track projects that don't have large timelines, especially large phases. So
Mhm.
because of that, I love the functionality of a quick schedule that I feel like it's the best communication tool to your team and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I use this kind of Microsoft project version. It is Microsoft project. It's just it's not even dumbed down. It's more, it's less
Simplified.
customizable.
Okay.
So it's almost like the Apple version. It's not versus like the PC version. I think that's the easiest connection I'm able to make, but it's not as customizable. But because of that, it's more user friendly. So there's a couple different ways that you can look at the same information, which I like as well. So this is just a test project I set up. This is not really a real client project, but just to show you all the platform itself. So I've created, the phases, and in the phases, I've created subtasks per usual. And you can actually add columns. I typically add like start and finish columns here. It will show the duration, start, finish. So sometimes I'll use this version. I'm mostly in this tab right here called timeline. Timeline is the Gantt chart. So that's the typical Gantt chart version you're able to see. You can zoom in and out as much as you want to see what you want. I like zooming a little further in so you can see the weeks and what's happening per week. Same with Microsoft Project Schedule, the larger version. It is, you're making dependencies, you're creating a Gantt chart based on all of the subtasks. But it's very simple, as Vivian was kind of talking about before. So, if we have a page turn with project stakeholders, which again, I'd highlight because it would include owner. If that pushes by a day or even a week, obviously it's going to have a ripple effect here. We're delivering a week later. So it's a very quick way to show that. You can kind of grab milestones, move them around, grab Gantts and move them around. Again, it's just a more user-friendly, quick way to do it. However, it doesn't have the customization that the overall project schedule has, Microsoft Project. It doesn't have the color coding specifically, especially in this Gantt chart version. I really wish that it did.
Yeah.
It has some, conditional coloring here. If I were to, say name contains project initiation.
Oh, that could be like if it included like client name, color code, everything that had the client name in it, right?
Yeah. But it is really similar to all of the Microsoft apps, right? It is what you put into it. So it's not, you have to be really on top of it to be able to keep managing it. So again, yeah, it's what you put in, but there's different ways to see the schedule. So this board version, you can have created, different phases, but you could do it by discipline or by consultant. You can drag and drop all of these things, all of these line items around so you can see it in a different way.
I like that for when the client when the client's deliverables are, if you kind of pull out just what the client ones are, you could just easily extract that portion. I do like that.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe like owner involvement, everything, including project stakeholders, all the page turns, they can move over there. So yeah, again, it's what you put into it. But you can get really deep with this if you really want to. And then also with line items, you can actually assign people. So I've assigned myself to one of the line items, which is why I'm popping up here, or at least I thought I did. Let's see. Open it up. Let's assign it. So assign to, I'll say myself. Once I close out, go to here. Now I have one incomplete task, and it shows my task that is incomplete. So it's nice. It's a good way to manage staff, I would say. And because I've embedded it within the team itself, it's always accessible to the team. So, I'm getting a lot less questions, or at least having to field a lot less questions from the team saying, when is our next deliverable? What are our next steps? They can directly go into the project schedule and see it that way. So that's a function I really like.
Yeah, kind of answer the questions for themselves. Interesting. And then can you PDF or export that to something that you could send externally?
Yeah, so you can. I will say that is another wish that I had for this. I wish when you went to print it, it came out a little bit more formally, or you could add headers and footers in a typical way that you would from like a Microsoft Word doc. Yeah,
Or even
just
the
to make it
Microsoft
a little bit more
project,
formal.
I could change the legend and I could add my logo and, you know,
Mhm.
all of those.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe there is a way, and I haven't found out yet.
Sure.
I've worked with this, for a couple months, not too long, but
Yeah, that's not too bad. I
there's
mean,
always more I can learn, I'm sure. So
yeah.
again, it comes out a little informal. So
Mm,
I would say I like this version a lot for internal staff, internal consultants, but sending it externally, I don't like it as much for that. I have to put in a lot more work to make it graphically look nice, add headers, take it out, put it in Bluebeam and do my
yeah.
own
Yep.
do my
Dress it
own
up.
stuff to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, dress it up and make it look a little bit more formal.
Mm-hmm. Do you share this with consultants? Like you add consultants to your team's team so that they can access it?
Yeah, so we have tried that in the past.
Yeah, so
Adding
have we.
external folks to a team is kind of tough. There are some limitations there.
Yeah.
So we haven't mastered it, I'll say.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But usually I'll
Okay.
send it out
Instead
to
of Kelly,
consultants.
instead of adding them to the team, could this be posted maybe? I guess you don't. I was kind of wondering out loud, I guess.
Mm,
Can you post it to SharePoint somewhere, but then, for external people to see it, but then maybe your internal team would have to not find it the same way. It's right there, but
mm-hmm.
it's not as
Yeah.
right accessible, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm
I
thinking like
think
some
you'd be able
projects.
to. Oh, sorry, Rosalind.
Oh, I was just gonna say like some of our projects where it's been like the schedule is constantly changing for whatever reason. It's been handy to have somewhere for the consultants to go and be like, wait, when do they need this from us by? Like the
Exactly.
holy grail of like these are the actual dates. Don't go digging through your email because you might miss the latest one.
Right. And I mean, Steve has a great point. I haven't tested yet adding it into a SharePoint and sending that externally. It is because it's a Microsoft project and we deal with
Yeah.
Microsoft SharePoint. Everything is syncing together. So it should always be the updated version if you put the original
Yeah.
file in, as opposed to kind of PDFing a static file and putting it in the
Right.
SharePoint. So I'll have to test that. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
We've just kicked off the true use of SharePoint in our office. So
Oh, we
that'll
did
be the
that
next step.
like, I don't know, maybe it was like a year and a half ago. Yep, it's a transition, I will say.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, great, thanks. That was very interesting to see. And I will say there are a lot of similarities to the one. I'll share the tool I've been enjoying. Unless you have anything else you want to add, Kelly.
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Yeah, let me share the tool I've been enjoying. Share my screen. Oh, I think you have to stop sharing before I share.
Were you going to show the dashboard for the team site as well?
Oh,
There we
thanks for
go.
jumping in and asking that. Yeah, Kelly, do you have a dashboard that you use for Teams?
Oh, I could look and try to find it. I wasn't exactly prepared to share it. So.
That's okay. Maybe, well, I'm sharing my screen. Maybe if you're able
All right,
to.
let me see if I can find something.
Sure. Oh, and I see, was there another question that popped up? Oh, anyone tried ClickUp? I haven't heard of ClickUp. Is anyone else?
Mm-mm.
No.
I have not.
So I'll share my screen. We've been using Team Gantt in our office. Move you all over here. So it's like a web platform. It's like subscription based, so you subscribe monthly or for the year. And at least when we signed up, it was not that expensive, and we just have one login for the whole office. Multiple people can be logged in at a time. And in some ways, it's graphically kind of similar to what you were just sharing, Kelly. And similar idea where this is like I duplicated another one, just made it a demo, but you can, drag things around. You have tasks and milestones, you move them around, you can create interdependencies. So, when that moves, it moves the other thing. you can collapse groups and things nicely. And another cool feature about this is that, which I haven't actually used that much yet, it's a newer feature, is you can set baselines. So you can create new baseline, and then you can create several of them. You can like name them, you can rename them, or by default, it's just like the date and time that you created it. You can delete them if you want to later. But you can see we got these little gray bars under each task and milestone. So now if I move this, you'll see those gray bars stay. So you can kind of track how things have changed over time, which I will say would have been helpful in some of the projects I've been working on. And then you can like create several of them. So I can go and say, create another one. I've got to make sure that it's turned on, clicked on to show. So then it creates another one. So then if it shifts again, like you can kind of see how it would track over time. And you can always go back and delete them too, if they're no longer relevant, or, you're kind of just working through something. Sometimes that's helpful. But I think the big advantage we found with this over something with Microsoft Project, when we were kind of testing that out, is that it PDFs things nicely. So if you go to export PDF, you can do a lot of customization. I'll just kind of do the default here. But it gives you something like decent graphically, includes, like your logo, the printed date. You can customize how wide this column is, if the names show up next to the bars. You can change all the colors of these. That's all customizable. Whether it includes the start and end dates. You can tell it to like crop down to a certain date range too. So if you're just if you want to set an updated schedule for task 2 of the study, you can kind of have it crop down to just that.
And you'll share this with your external consultants and clients?
Yep. We send it to the consultants and the client usually. And again, like my instinct tends to be to make it pretty detailed, obviously. But kind of for the reason Vivian was talking about, including that detail, I find sometimes it's helpful either when the client hasn't made a decision on time, right? Or someone gets something to you late, you're like, okay, well, this is how everything's now going to slide, right? So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else with Team Gantt I wanted to show. Color coding.
Yeah, so it's nice. It's similar to the more user-friendly version of Microsoft Project. You can keep sliding. You can slide things, and it's a little easier to use.
Yeah,
absolutely. Way easier than if you're putting together like various lines and you have to, if you insert a new task or a line, you have to make sure the logic is all linked and everything.
Yeah. When I was testing out Microsoft Project, I was like, this is not as intuitive to me.
No.
All right. Let's see. Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about what tools we use, and it's already almost one. I think another thing that would be nice to talk about is kind of like lessons learned and any pitfalls or best practices that you've developed or run into over time, things you would share with like a newer project manager, maybe. What do you guys think? Any immediate thoughts? Like I'm thinking, for example, like the way QA/QC seems to keep always, I don't know, maybe that's me, that's a personal problem, but if anyone has tips for like, when you say you want a week for QA/QC, how do you make sure it actually stays a week and doesn't slowly get crunched, right? As like, whether it's internally, right? The design changes, right? You're like, oh, but we could really make that better. Or the client had last minute requests and like things, just keep getting crunched.
I think for us, it's also on the owner side, it's allowing time for not only for the architect to do the QA/QC, but also for us to have adequate time, because we also need to add time in the schedule to review it with the client. And it's not always just a singular page turn that happens. Sometimes it's multiple page turns that happen and answering the questions, because let's be honest, not all clients or not all members of the client committee do the page turn. There's usually one or two that are more intimately involved in the page turn, and the others just make the assumption based off of the, conceptual design of what they imagined it to be. So having enough time to go back to the client and explain to them what changes happened is also important, and making sure that we do allow for enough time in the schedule towards the end. It always feels rushed, like you said, the QA QC portion, but to hold the time for the move-in process, the furniture process, as well as holding the time for the startup and the commissioning
Mhm.
and the trainings. Those all seem to kind of, at some point or another, fall to the wayside or are rushed through.
Mm.
But those are the vital ones that the client remembers at the end of the project.
Yeah, there's something about what at the end, leaving the final taste in people's mouths about a project, I think. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think
That-
it's just interesting the balance between as a PM, between kind of making sure your client's happy and in the end achieving their goals. Because as you're in the early stages of design, people are kind of, designers want to design a little more, clients want to think about things a little more. Do we want that patio? Do we not want the patio? And they can't decide, and then it gets kicked in the next week. That's where you really have to kind of really, not in a mean way, be like keeping people on track. And it comes down to like every single meeting, these are the things we have to accomplish in this meeting.
Yep.
Otherwise we're going to miss the date. And it's and everything seems fine. We'll talk about it next week, until you get to that date. And then they're not happy. And then you have to ask for additional services, and they're really not happy. So,
Yeah.
it's on you to really kind of push things back, push things left, if you will, and get
Mhm.
those things done every week. And that's the challenge of the PM, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where our role becomes more of the, for lack of a better term, kind of like the police,
Yeah.
making sure
True.
that you as the architect, I want to make sure you have your answers, because ultimately if you don't have the answer and it's still ambiguous to you, you're going to design it one way thinking you have the direction you need, and then you come back and find out that it was in a completely different way, and now you've wasted a week's worth of time. Right. And that again has the ripple effect. So we find our job to be more in a very gentle, pushing way, to be that police, to say, and I think that's, for us, the full version of the Microsoft project has come helpful, where, no, I need to meet these deadlines. That if we
This is
don't,
why.
the project, and this is why, and this portion of the project becomes in jeopardy, pushing out this one. Most people don't think of it that way, but how long ever it takes to design determines when we go out to bid. And
Mhm.
if I'm encroaching upon winter conditions, or, I can start in the summer laying out the foundation. And that becomes a tricky balance. For us, it's always we find that our role and our main function, especially since we're not producing the deliverables as far as the design, is to be that police for you. That the better relationship we can have with the architect, I can help be that, kind of like that, that gatekeeper, and say, no, we have to. This is
herder.
why.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, because I feel like I'm
you play such a
Yeah.
critical role too, because it really prevents that finger pointing, later
Yes.
on, where like big contractors love to say, and they love to play the game where, oh, we sent you the submittal on Friday afternoon, and now it's Monday, you've had it for 3 days.
No.
So, and it's, and it's due in 2 days, and then they blame you. And like, it's one thing for one submittal, but like 25 submittals are now red. And it's like, so it is critical. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something we do look out for in the P6 schedule to make sure that they are accounting for the weekends and the holidays. Because anticipating or if you submit a submittal at 4 o'clock on Friday, do not expect it back on a Monday, Tuesday. You still have to give a full week of review, and that starts from Monday. Like making sure that they have that incorporated, because a lot of it where we do find is that they don't put in the weekend, the holidays into the P6 schedule. And yes, it already shows that you're delinquent 3 days, when in actuality, it was a long weekend, for example.
Yeah.
No one's
Right.
working on a long weekend.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, this has happened actually. I mean, gosh, it keeps happening. It's happened even more so recently for me. So it's about too like over communicating, speaking up on that first kickoff about the expectations. But yeah, Vivian, you play that key role, and that's so important for the project.
Yeah.
But lean on us. I mean, not us in particular, but like lean on if there is an OPM on the project, lean on them and highlight that if they've missed it. Use them in that capacity to kind of advocate for you and to be more of that, a little bit of it's not only with the contractor, sometimes it's even with the client. You know, the expectations, in my own perspective, I feel like my role is managing expectation. Whether it's the client's expectation, the project's expectation, the internal expectations, the architects, everybody's on like just managing those expectations to all flow in the same direction. So lean on them and ask them to help you maneuver that one, because the last thing you want is like Steve said, a finger pointing session with the contractor.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of great points you've made, Vivian, too, that on projects where we don't have an OPM, things that we can kind of be thinking of, and like ways of kind of nudging the client and, you know, explaining it to them, and
make sure the schedule always has the weekend and holidays.
I like being the voice for the design team too. Like, let's say a contractor is, you know, they're involved in pre-construction services, and they kind of lay out a schedule, and we need the, you know, they just dates, you know, and times for things, and all of a sudden it looks like, we need the CDs on July 6th. Well, you know what? That's not so great. So let's talk about that. And I'm always trying to look out for the design team, that they're not putting a bind like that, or against, you know, a Monday deadline or something like that. Just make it on Friday, make it on Thursday.
Right. Yeah.
Because a lot of times in those type of contracts also, there's liquidated damages. So they're looking at it on when their deliverables are and how they can already fight. This coming from a former contractor. I started in the field on the contractor side. So my perspective is, if there's liquidated damages, I'm showing how I can deliver it before the liquidated damages come in. And if I have to compress the design portion of it, I do. And then afterwards, when you push back and say, no, we can't deliver, that's my argument on why I shouldn't be held accountable for the liquidated damages.
I feel like,
right. And again, being proactive as a PM, being proactive, telling that owner, whether it's, you know, with just the owner or through an OPM, like, hey, let's get the contractor on early. We don't want them coming on late and saying, you know, they come on too late, or the owner starts too late, and you got to be done by December 31st with the whole project to turn it over. And it's just the design schedule just keeps getting compressed. So just trying to look ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I had even more questions. We could almost do a part 2 on this, but this was great. Thank you everyone for joining. We have like about a minute left. I don't know if anyone has any final questions or comments. I see there's been a little bit of a chat going on the ClickUp. It sounds like it's more than just a schedule a tool for schedules, but also for kind of project planning and productivity, which I'll say actually Team Gantt also has some functions of like putting in staffing and percent complete and things like that, which we don't really use it for, but I know it's available as well. There are a few tools out there like that. But I think with that, we'll call it a wrap. It's 1 o'clock. Thank you everyone for joining. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting
Yeah,
us.
thank you. Yes, thank you for the invite.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you.